draft day, baby. Salute. We've got a little bit of whiskey and root beer here, which is my personal favorite mixer for my whiskey. So celebrating draft day. Cheers to you, James. Cheers to the watchers at home. It's a great day to be alive. I can tell you that much.
Oh, well, maybe. We'll see what happens in an hour or
Yeah,
two.
right. True. For now, it's
Yeah.
awesome. But with that, we will go ahead and jump right into this because we are running a bit behind. We had some technical difficulties, unfortunately, so we are just now getting this show going. But with that, we have some top 10 rumors here. So obviously the Raiders are picking Fernando Mendoza at one. I always want to call him Francisco. I don't know why. I just think it works better. But maybe that's just me. But with that, obviously they're picking Mendoza. There's really not too much to say about that. So we're not going to waste our time. Obviously they're going to take 25 minutes to make that pick. So we're going to hear more than enough once the actual draft happens. But with that, the draft sort of begins at pick 2, as we've talked about many times on this show. The Jets right now, it sounds like they're taking David Bailey. From everything I've heard, it sounds like things have kind of switched in the last 24 hours, and all the reports are saying Bailey. I personally like Reese a little bit more, but I can see why a team would take Bailey over him. So with that, Bailey at 2. What do you got for that, James?
That surprises me. I haven't really heard that. I mean, I've heard, I'll say whispers of it. That's not completely foreign, but I heard at least last I heard, Reese was still at least the front runner. But I actually don't mind it just because I don't really care what the Jets do. I'm not a Jets fan, and it kind of turns the whole no, maybe not the whole draft, but it turns the draft on its head a little bit because every mock for the last 2 months had Reese going number two. So even if they just switch places with and he'll go wherever Bailey was going to end up going, it's still at least a shuffle from the same old that we've seen.
Yeah, definitely, and I am right there with you on that. Um, with that being said, I am a bit surprised, like I mentioned before, but like I said, I do think it does make some sense that they would go Bailey. Now there's not too much else on that pick, so we're gonna go ahead and move on to the number 3 pick with the Cardinals because this is where stuff kind of gets fun. There is rumors that they are going Jeremiah Love if they can't trade down. Personally, I don't love that. I don't think. Well, kind of funny. But I don't love them going for Love. So no. But with that, I do feel like a trade down is very, very possible. The Cowboys and the Chiefs are both teams that are interested in the trade down there, or trade up, I should say, to number 3. And it would be for Arvell Reese, in my opinion. Obviously, David Bailey is, a possibility if he's there. But I do just, personally, I think they would do it for Arvell Reese in general anyway. So, with that being said, the Cardinals are trying to trade down very, very hard, and New Orleans is another team in that top 10 that is looking to trade up there. So we could see a kind of a bidding war. So it could get fun. I don't know if they trade out of the pick simply because of what might be the asking price. And the Cleveland Browns are also a team trying to look to trade down at 6. And I mean, if you're a team that doesn't really have Bain that much lower than Arvell Reese, or if you have him even higher, he's probably there at 6. So you could kind of wait and see on that. So I'm gonna pass it back over to you, James, for your comments on that.
Yeah, Love at 3 makes no sense to me. At least
Oh, I think we lost you, James. Um, with that, we are gonna keep
I
rolling.
like to
Oh,
build them
okay. He might be in and
structural.
out. We'll see. It
What?
seems like all right. You're back.
Hello?
Okay, you're back. You're good. Last thing we heard was I don't love getting Love at 3, and then we
Oh,
didn't hear
okay, then
much
it
after
wasn't
that.
that bad. I was saying, like, I was in the middle of a sentence and you're like, he might be back. I'm like, what? Sorry, guys. I wish it was at least telling me on my end when it cut out. But yeah, I don't like Love at 3 just for the simple fact of um, the way the Cardinals roster is built. I like the player. He's a great player. We've talked all about him, um, throughout the draft process. But I don't see. the team building philosophy of kind of starting with a running back. Like they still need a few linemen. They still need a bunch of pieces on defense. They still need a quarterback. So I'm like, I wouldn't really just start with a running back, even though I really do like Love as a player. I just feel like that's a kind of an odd starting point in terms of that way to build a team. So I don't like that at all, really.
Yeah, and I like like I said, I'm right there with you on that. And I think that's really why the Cardinals are looking to trade down here because I don't know if they love Reese or Bain. I think they're thinking, well, maybe we can trade down to like 8 and still get an edge. But I honestly think they might be looking at Maui Noah
Yeah, I'm
mostly.
like, take an
So
offensive lineman then, somebody,
yeah, and I,
not a
I
running
feel
back.
like if yeah, right, exactly. I feel like if they trade down to like 12, they could still maybe get like a Fano. Maybe Maui Noah's
Yeah,
there as
absolutely.
well. But I like I said, I think that's the whole idea. I don't really think they want to take Love. I think that might be a little bit of a smokescreen to maybe because Tennessee is another team that there are rumors that they might trade down. Maybe the Cardinals are trying to smokescreen the Titans into staying because that gets their pick a little bit more value. I don't know. Because if you're a team that wants Bain, maybe you think, okay, we're not even going to mess with 3 because they'll probably go Reese and then we go Bain. Or a team that wants to get Styles, maybe you're trying to jump the Giants. You could go up there to 4 and do that. But if the Titans are really, they are set in taking Love, they'll probably have to sit at 4 and do that. But like I said, there's a lot of rumors right now, of all types of stuff, trade up, trade down in this top 10. And speaking of, Ruben Bain, he could slide. I mean, there's a chance that Bain slides out of the top 10 even, which I think is crazy. He's my number one edge, but with the off-field concerns and things like that, with the short
Short
arms and all
arms,
that,
yeah,
like, it makes sense. So
yeah,
I
yeah,
kind of get him sliding, but at the same
yeah.
time, I
Between the
think he's a
off the
great
field
player.
stuff, the short arms at the combine, I don't think he should be taken in the top 16. Just
Yeah, for sure. Personally, I wouldn't even think about taking Ruben Bain unless I'm the Lions at 17 in the entire draft.
yeah, at
That's
the
just me.
earliest,
So,
yeah, just
and I just think that's because he's a perfect fit for Detroit and nobody else. But no, with
yeah.
that, I do think it makes some sense for all these teams to look to trade down, though. We're going to hear a lot of trade down conversation. And I think Bain is part of that, and I think that's why we're hearing a lot of mid round teams looking to move up. I know we've heard some rumblings about the Lions looking to move up, which we'll talk about a little bit here in a second. But the Cowboys, the Saints, and the Chiefs are really, I think, the most aggressive teams that are looking to trade up right now because obviously the Cowboys and the Chiefs are win now, so they could move up to get a guy like Reese or Bain. But I also think the Saints could trade up because they are still within the top 10, so it takes a lot less to move up. And if they love a guy like Reese or Bain, I could see a move up there too.
Yeah, I disagree in terms of Kansas City kind of being a win now, just because of Mahomes' injury. I feel like he's going to miss a significant part of this year. And don't get me wrong, I'm not going to say they're going to like cash in the season and not try, but I feel like they could go with a little bit more of a um, I guess I can just call it like a preload and maybe get like a corner, for example, who sometimes take a year or two to develop because they just traded McDuffie and kind of look at it a little bit more big picture personally. At least that's how I would do it if I was Kansas City. But I mean, who knows what they're thinking? They obviously are a good team year in and year out. Chris Jones isn't getting any younger, so maybe they do want to move up and try to put like a Bane next to him or something like that. Which, as I've mentioned before, I do love kind of overloading one line or the other. So
Yeah, and I think that's the one that makes the most sense for me is if they move up for Bane or maybe a Caleb Downs, I think could make a little sense, but I think Downs could be there. But I think the Chiefs would be most interested in moving from 9 to 6, which probably doesn't cost a ton. I know we've heard a lot about, the Chiefs moving up to 3 or the Cowboys moving up to 3 and giving up both their first round picks, which I think is possible having 2 in the same draft. But I think it makes most sense if the Chiefs go from 9 to say 6 and get Bane and only have to give up like a second and a fourth or something like that. And even that might be a little bit much to move up 3 spots here, especially for who's on the board. I don't know if the Browns would be sold on drafting whoever's there. So I know they're a team that wants to trade down as well, so they might be a little bit more apt to make that deal. But I do think it would make sense for the Chiefs to make a trade for Reuben Bain specifically because, like you mentioned, adding to that defensive line, Chris Jones isn't getting any younger, and all that. So with that though, speaking of some things that might kind of not confuse you, but surprise you, I should say. There's a lot of talks right now of Jordan Tyson, the wide receiver, going before Carnell Tate, which we really didn't hear too much up until this week, which I mean, maybe it's just draft Twitter overdoing the medicals and all that kind of stuff, but I don't know, man. I in my latest mock, I had him going I want to say it was top 13 somewhere in there. There's also some rumors that the Cowboys are looking to take a wide receiver, so they could stay there at 12 if Tyson or Tate falls, which I don't know if Tate will make it to them at 12, but they could trade Pickens. So there's some different things that are going on. Like I said, the Cowboys could trade up even for a wide receiver. There's so many rumors going right now. You know how it goes, man, when we're this close to the draft. Like everything flies around. It's like basically every team is trying to trade up and down. That's the news, pretty much at this point. But
it is, and it's not even sorry to cut you off, but it's not even per se a smokescreen because everyone's just trying to see what the value is. Like, yeah, okay, let's just use the Lions because that's our example and the team we're all most familiar with. Like, I heard a lot of rumors and whatnot saying that they were looking to trade up, and I don't know if they're actually looking, or let me rephrase, I don't know if they're actually going to trade up or if they're just saying, hey, what's the price if we do? And they're just kind of doing their due diligence because, like you mentioned, there's a couple teams trying to trade down. So if the Lions are like, how desperate are you? Will you take only a fourth or 2 4? Like just weigh the options and kind of just see how you can maneuver up and down your board. So I don't know if Dallas is going to move up personally. I feel like they have a lot of holes. Going through like the mock drafts and whatnot that we've done over the last couple weeks, I was Dallas, and they have several holes, and they already have an extra first and some other extra picks. So I personally wouldn't, if I was them, kind of cash those in and move up. They already have 2 picks in the top 20.
yeah, definitely, and I agree with you. I feel like if I don't know really. It's hard to say what I would do exactly because having 2 first round picks does kind of intrigue you to make that move up if you have a blue chipper like Reuben Bain that's falling. But at the same time, you have 2 first round picks and you can add 2 really good players. And I mean, think about like Keldrick Falk, he's a guy that I really like. You could probably get him at 12. I did have him falling to 20 in my recent mock just because of the rumblings that I've been hearing, but that's who they took at 20. So, I mean, I feel like if you're a team like the Cowboys that you kind of do have multiple needs, it would make sense for you to stand pat. But at the same time, if you trade Pickens, get an extra late first rounder or something along those lines, you can go crazy and trade up and still have 2 first round picks. So there's going to be a lot of movement, I think, for Dallas this draft in general, because I think Jerry Jones. I don't know if you watch the Netflix doc about the Cowboys.
No.
So I watched it. It was really good. A lot of fun. But I think that kind of rejuvenated Jerry Jones a little bit. He was like, "Wait a minute, I did do that back in the day." He's like, "Maybe we can make some moves here now," because they traded Micah Parsons like literally a couple months after that came out. They traded Micah Parsons. Then they trade for Quinnen Williams. They trade for George Pickens and all that. So I do expect a lot of movement out of the Cowboys. But with that being said, in terms of receivers, they're another team that, could take a receiver. Like I said, Tyson could go earlier than expected. Tate could go a little bit later than expected. That's going to be something, fun to monitor as the draft goes down. But with that, moving on to picks 10 through 20 here. obviously we're not going to necessarily sit here and talk about who's getting picked where and all that because if you want to see that, we have multiple mock draft episodes that you can watch if that's what you're looking for. But right now we're just talking about rumors and news and things like that. So basically, right now there are rumors that the Bucks, the Jets, and the Giants all could be looking to move down. Once again, the Cowboys are looking to trade up, and then of course the Lions. There's some conversation they could be looking to trade up. I've also heard a little bit of they could trade down. I don't know if a trade down
Please.
is very likely. I would love it. Don't get me wrong, but like if the Cowboys are sitting at 20 and Keldrick Falk is there at 17 and they're comfortable moving up for him, I would do that if I'm the Lions 100% because none of those next two teams are taking a tackle you want. I think you'd feel comfortable doing that, and it would be really best case scenario because you're not moving down too much. You can still get the guy that you want and add a little bit more value. I don't see that happening necessarily because he'll probably, if Keldrick Falks makes it to 17, he's probably going to make it to 20. So unless another team trades up to jump them, which I don't know if I really see a team trading up for Falk at this point. But like I said earlier, it's like every team wants to trade down, especially in a draft like this where there's not a lot of blue chippers. If you're in that, I would say 6 to 20 range, you're probably looking to trade down realistically just to add some more capital. So, there's not too much of a drop off in talent, I think, once you get to that point.
Yeah, I agree completely. I I agree with you in terms of there's not that many blue chippers as there is in most drafts, but I've seen a lot of people say, um, and I take it with a grain of salt, but I see a lot of people say like this just isn't a good draft class, and I take exception to that just because I feel like it's actually a really good class. It just lacks some of the top end talent, and once you get past, I feel like 7 or 8. You're no longer in like the blue chip range, or if you are, then it's like blue chip with either injury risk or some other things going on. But after that, like I feel like you can still get starters in the mid to late third, early fourth. It's a rather deep draft in terms of at least starting caliber players, in my opinion. And once again, just making everything linked to the Lions. Look at the like offensive tackles, which obviously we've been looking at most drafts you would say, okay, at 17 you hope it's this guy or that guy. I'm like, there's like 5 options between and obviously everyone has them ranked a little differently, but like I don't think anyone can be too upset at a Freeling or Proctor or Lomu or Miller or like the list just goes on and on. Um unless you're me then it's Proctor. But um but yeah, like most years, you only have like 1 or 2 guys that you're kind of, crossing your fingers over. And this year, there's okay, whichever one of these guys is kind of there because obviously some of them are going before pick 17. Um, I think most fans would at least still be okay with.
Yeah, and to your first point, actually, I was just having this conversation in a fantasy football group chat, and basically everybody kind of agreed where it's like, yeah, a draft's not bad because there's not a lot of high-end prospects at the top. A draft is bad when there's not a lot of good prospects from rounds like 3 to 5. And I think I agree with that because, like you said, you're still going to, in this draft, I think you're still going to get starters in the second round. You're still going to get depth players that can, rotate in the third and so on and so forth. And that's kind of all you really look for in a draft. And like we said, that's really what makes a bad draft is if you don't have that. And I don't think this draft is one of those. I think it's just like the top 20 prospects there's no clear blue chipper other than Mendoza and Love, really, in Styles, I think, at those positions. Because there's really not, like, even safety. There's Caleb Downs, who's like a blue chipper, but then you got Dylan Thieneman, who a lot of people are loving now a little bit more, which I don't necessarily agree with, but I think that might take him out of that. So if you think about it, there's really 3 blue chippers or clear number ones at their position in this draft, and I think that's what gets people, especially when there's no top edge rusher. I think almost every year there's a number one edge rusher that's just a very, very high level prospect. We don't really have that this year. I think it's Ruben Bain, but a lot of people disagree. So with
Yeah,
that, go ahead.
like I agree it's Bane, but then you have the off the field issues, and I don't give two craps about it, but some people care about the arm length.
Hmm.
Some you could say Bailey, but then there's sometimes the lack of production. You're kind of just jumping on the potential. I would call like Maui Goa a blue chip offensive lineman, but then you have the back issue. So it's just there's blue chip butts, and it's just like we'll see what happens. Only time will tell.
Yeah, exactly. There's just too many question marks, I think, for the average casual NFL draft fan to realize that this is still a good draft. Like, everybody looks back at the 2013 draft and like, man, that draft sucked. And it's like, yeah, but I mean, there were still really good players. We got Darius Slay in the second round in that draft. And I feel like that matters more than necessarily who gets picked, top five or whatever, if you're basing a draft off of that. But with that being said, the Lions, like we mentioned, are a possible trade up candidate. I hate that. We've talked about that at length on this show, so I won't take too long talking about it. But my synopsis is as simple as this: we have two picks in the top 100 this year. If we were to trade up in this first round, and it's not for Ruben Bain, I don't understand, simply because we're going to have to end up giving up 2027 picks, and with how good that draft class is supposed to be, I just don't think that's a smart decision, considering we came into this draft already pretty light on capital. So that's really the way I see it, especially considering a lot of it's been for Caden Proctor, and I don't love that. I think he'll be there at 17. Call me crazy. I would rather take Max hit Honicher. There we go. Over Proctor if we have to trade up for Proctor, because I know Max will be there at 17. So that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I can't stand the idea of trading up. Don't get me wrong. If we do and it is for Bane, I would be excited, but I would also kind of clinch a little bit because, as you mentioned, we only have two picks in the top 100, and if it's for Bane, I'm assuming we got to trade up to at least 10. So it's
Hmm.
going to probably cost us our second round pick this year and probably, as you mentioned, a pick next year. So then, if that is, let's just foresay it happens, then we only have that one pick in the top 100 this year, and we dip into next year's prospects. So I would love to have Bane, but at that cost, I just can't really justify it per se.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you too. Like I mentioned, I mean, if we're talking like trading up a couple picks and giving up our two fourth rounders, maybe. But even then, that I think is a lot. But if you think about it, it's like if you like Ruben Bain as much as I do, you're trading for a top tier edge rusher. So I think it is worth it. But with our need at tackle, man, I just don't think I could do it. Feeling confident. So
I saw
with
one, sorry,
you're good. Good.
I saw one mock. To be fair, it was just a fan mock. No offense to the fan, but it did have us trading up for Ruben Bain and then trading again up, using the back end of the first round and getting Blake Miller. So we ended up with Bain and Miller in the first round.
That would be crazy, and I don't know how we would pull that off
It
personally
does cost a
because
27 first.
yeah, I'm not. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
was gonna
doing
say,
it.
I'm like, it was steep, but I'm like, for
Yeah.
today, I would be excited.
Yeah, I would be like, oh, let's go. But if we don't win a Super Bowl, I would be pretty upset simply because that 27 class is supposed to be really, really good. Um, but with that, like we mentioned, the tackle class is really deep, so I don't really see the Lions moving up for that. Ruben Bain would make some sense, but again, like we said, the capital might be a little too much. But with that, moving on to the back end of this draft. There are some rumors about the Eagles looking to jump Detroit for a tackle, which I think makes some sense depending on who they want. If they really want Blake Miller, I could understand that. And with that said, the 2026 NFL draft is officially open. The Las Vegas Raiders are on the clock. We'll probably
Oakland?
stay on. True that. We'll probably we'll probably stay on through this pick just to talk about this back end of the draft, and then we will hop off. But we will be back when the Lions are on the clock. So stay tuned for that because I'm literally gonna have once we close this out, I'm gonna have my computer ready in case we trade up. Because
I was gonna say, I'm
there's
like,
a
I
chance.
might be able to try to make it, or if not, maybe I can run down here because I'm not just gonna sit in my cold basement the whole time.
Right.
I can try to run downstairs, so maybe a post pick reaction, but yeah, we'll figure that out later.
Yeah, definitely. With that being said, though, like we already talked about, the Cowboys obviously are looking to trade up. Like I mentioned, the Eagles are looking to trade up to jump the Lions. Um, Okay, the pick is not in yet. But the Cowboys obviously are trying to trade up, like we said. Eagles are trying to jump the Lions. The Steelers are a sneaky team that could trade up. They have a ton of draft capital this season, or this draft, I should say. And they have enough to move up pretty high if they want somebody bad. I don't know who that would be necessarily because they obviously have some needs, but they have a need at tackle. But like we said, Lomu or whoever should be there, Freeling, somebody will be there for them that they feel they can develop at least. And they have a guy right now that they feel okay about. So I mean, I don't know who they would trade up for. Maybe Caleb Downs if he falls. That could make some sense if he's sitting there at like 13 with the Rams. But even then, I think that's a stretch. So I could see it because they have the capital, but I don't know about it simply because of who would they move up for at this point? Because a guy like Bain would obviously cost quite a bit. But with that, obviously um, Texans, sorry, the Texans are another team that is very, very interested in moving up in this draft. Sneaky team again, like I said, kind of like the Steelers. They do have a decent amount of top 100 draft picks, so I could see it depending on who's available. Again, I just don't know who they would take. Probably an O lineman. I could see them moving up for a tackle, possibly, which we'll see what happens. But I mean, I think that would make some sense.
It absolutely would. They need I'll be polite and say desperate need of O lineman over there. Even when like they acquired Montgomery from us, that they still threw in Scruggs, who, don't get me wrong, I realize he wasn't our starter, but he was still a pretty key depth piece in my opinion. And it's they need an O lineman bad, especially with as I kind of mentioned with the other podcast. If you tuned in, you got to have an O line for thousand reasons, but especially with young quarterbacks, you don't want to ruin Stroud, get him too beat up too early. You obviously put in draft capital, giving the Lions a fourth round pick for a running back, and it'll be kind of weird to trade for a running back and then not block for him. Um, and I even heard some rumors about an hour before we jumped on that there is a possibility that they could be trading Nico Collins.
Yeah, I did see that. I do think it's most likely they rework his contract because I think that's really what it's all about. I don't think it's even really they want to trade him. I think teams were just checking in because he will need a new contract. I mean, he's only making 20 million a year. I know that's crazy to say only, but he's a top 10 receiver at this point, and I mean, receivers are making 40 to 50 million now. So, I think he does deserve a little bit of a raise there. I know it's insane. But with that, there are some other teams looking to trade. The Bears are a team that's looking to trade down. I have heard trying to recoup some assets and pick an interior defensive lineman maybe in the first few picks of the second round. So watch out for the Cardinals maybe trading up to get Ty Simpson. I think I don't love that personally. I think I would just sit at 34, and if he's there, take him if you like him. If he's not, oh well. You got Brissett for the season anyway. I just don't love him. I don't love Simpson. I mean, I don't love Simpson in terms of a like developmental like prospect. He's like a Brock Purdy type to me, where it's like if he ain't ready day one, is he ever going to be? Because he doesn't really have, the physical tools that you would want out of like a true, top quarterback prospect. So we'll see on that. But like I said, the Bears are looking to move down.
Yeah, I really hope they don't find a draft partner or a trade partner. In fact, I hope they move up. But there's a couple good interior D linemen that we've talked about um, with Banks and like McDonald, and I feel like one of them will be there, so they don't really have to move. So I'm hoping that if they move down to acquire more picks, that both of those guys go. So at least while they gain more draft capital, they lose out on, in my opinion, the premier D tackles, even though this is a fairly deep D tackle draft.
Yeah, definitely. And I could see it depending on how far they move, like you said, because it is a decent D tackle draft. But I mean, if you're trading into the 40s, like obviously you're going to ask for quite a bit to move down that far, but you're missing out on like the Peter Woods, Caleb Banks, Caden McDonald's, and you're going to have to kind of settle for that second tier. So I don't think they move down that far. But another team I think that might be interested in moving down would be the Dolphins here because again, Cardinals
Yeah.
for Ty Simpson, just for that fifth year option. You trade up to get him at 30, and then it's only 4 picks, so I doubt the Dolphins really ask for that much. You might have to give up like a fourth rounder. I've also heard, some rumblings the Seahawks might just swap 32 to 34 and really not ask for much. But we'll see about that. Obviously, there could be a run on a few positions throughout the draft, so we'll have to keep an eye on that because these back end of the first guys teams, I mean, should or could move down depending on which position gets a run on it at what point. Because like corner, tackle, interior D line, like we just talked about, I could see edge. Obviously, receiver is going to have a decent run, so there's going to be a lot of different things going on and depending on what happens and who falls. But the Bills are another team that are interested in moving down, which makes a ton of sense, I think, because moving, like I said, if you're getting into that first like 10 picks in the second round, you're not really losing a lot of player value, I think.
I agree. And the one kind of, in my opinion, unseen benefit of picking early second rather than late first is there is a decent, I mean, that's not astronomical, but there's a decent gap in the pay. So you can have that rookie for, I think it's about 2 million, 1 to 2 million, I'll say, just to cover my backside, less per year on that rookie contract. And with some of these contracts, as you mentioned, some of these receivers are making 40, 50 million. That 1 or 2 million, it adds up. And I mean, once again, because I try to tie everything in Detroit, look how many free agents we signed this offseason for less than 2 million. We got Pachenko for under 2 million. So that 2 million difference that could be between 30 and 36 could be an entire running back.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I also think, considering the Dolphins specifically, I think it depends like what receivers are on the board because like if Boston and Concepcion and maybe Cooper, excuse me, if Cooper is there as well, I could see them moving down and feeling pretty good about getting their receiver. And then like you said, you recoup some of that money, which is funny. I just watched draft day and it was like that was one of the big things. The Seahawks decided to trade back up to get Callahan because they were like $7 million cheaper. It's 6 picks, but you save a lot of money. So I think that is a good point. And with that, Fernando Mendoza is officially the number one pick in the 2026 NFL draft. And don't
Not yet
worry,
for me.
that's the only pick that's going to be tipped because that's the only one that everybody knows.
Yeah.
With that, the Jets are now on the clock, and we are done here. We will join you guys back when the Lions are on the clock. We'll see when that happens, but stay tuned for that. Obviously, draft day, baby. We are here. Cheers to everybody watching. Go enjoy the draft. You know where to find me at JSoSweet, James at Gullet_James, and both of us at MIFB Network and MichiganFootballNetwork.com. Check out StickToTheModel.com. Check out Fanspeak.com and Fanatics.com. Links are in the description. We will see you guys here in maybe an hour or maybe 20 minutes. We'll see. It depends on when the Lions get on the clock. But once again, we appreciate you guys for watching, and we will see you